Just did you do that, Montes? Okay, let's see. We're setting this all up. We're getting all set up here. We're getting ready to go. We're going to be getting 425. 425. We're getting 425. 425. Hey, Everett. Jenny, of course, I can count on you. Howdy, howdy. We're getting 425 here. I know I'm a couple minutes behind. But yeah, it's one of those days. It's freaking cold out here. I guess I better shut the door to the house since it is so cold out here and I'm just letting the cold out. I don't know if any of y'all have a cool junk drink holder like I do, but it's so good. It stabilizes my drinks and it holds on, it grasps onto it too. Now, it doesn't quite work as well with the orange juice cup here, although it does still work. Yeah, it's stabilizing. Yeah, okay. But what it's best for is you can see that little inner lip in there. And I have no idea what kind of a part this is off of, but before this, I was spilling my rock stars all over the darn place, all the darn time. Yeah. Anyways, I was quite proud of myself for locating that thing. Hey, Dad, good to see you, buddy. I'm going to be talking about missing 411 again here. I'm getting a little bit of a late state. Wait, what am I trying to say? Late start. A little bit of a late start here. I mean, boy, and it's actually not that cold. It was when I first stepped out. It was a little bit of a shocker. Here you all can see my former home. This is what 8.5 years at university will get you for a house these days. No, I got sick. That's all that happened there. It's not that bleak out there, but it's pretty bleak for a lot of people. I know that. I feel sorry for a lot of the people that were out there. They just didn't have anywhere close to the wherewithal that I had, or the help, even the outside help, which I didn't have a huge amount of it, but I had a fair amount, a good enough amount, more than a lot of the people out there. So, you know, it's interesting out there on the street, and I'll have a day where I talk about this entirely, my time out there. You got to imagine too, I went from like somebody who was like almost living a halfway rock star life. One of my best friends and roommate was a rock star, and I had an after hours club and all this money to throw around and big local green dealer and everything else. And then all of a sudden, it's funny, when I lost my house that day, it was like balmy outside. I remember it. I was just moving a little bit of my most valuable stuff. I had almost nowhere to store anything, so I was just walking away from my household full of everything that I owned. And anyways, it was balmy. I remember it was November. It was balmy, and I was wearing a t-shirt. And literally, the night that I lost my home and I was out on the streets for the first time, this storm rolled in and it snowed and froze, and it stayed that way all the way through like mid-January. We've almost never had more than 2 days in a row where snow stuck on the ground. So for weeks to have ice on the ground, I mean, it's just unheard of. It was kind of a bad sign for me. I mean, it was just like, wow, the day, like it was sunny and balmy the day before. Hello there, Mr. Sponge Bob King. I'm going to be talking about being homeless today. I'm going to be talking about the missing 411 phenomenon, continuing on where I left off before. Dad has everything he needs except certainty. Yeah, certainty would be nice, but I don't think any of us get that. Oh well. Some people appear to get it. I don't know whether they really get it or they just believe they get it, or I'm happy for them if they do. Everybody, please be getting your plant medicine hats on. While that's what I'm doing here really quick. before I begin to jump back into Missing 411. And I'm going to be talking about some of the very strangest, most amazing, bizarre cases. Although there's so many of those, that's what you start to realize about this phenomenon. Is just how it's not just a couple of incidents; it's just thousands of them, and each one is just a head scratching baffler. Like you just can't even believe it. But I'm going to be talking about some of the oddest ones and some of the ones that have been swept along into the missing 411 thing that may not necessarily go in there, but they're just strange things that have happened in national parks. I'm going to start out actually talking about one here in Oregon where I live, Crater Lake National Park. So let me finish taking a hit here or two and we shall begin. Some strange disappearances and also just unalivings. One of the first ones I'll talk about is not a disappearance. Actually, it's just a man who unalived himself right in front of his wife and other people. He was a happy guy. No one knows what happened, but I'll be talking about that in a minute here. Let me get just calm down. Let me get just a hit here. I know you guys are clamoring to hear the sound of my wisdom and my vast store of knowledge. Brandon F. and Mitchell. Hey, what's up, buddy? I'm getting ready to talk about some extremely fascinating, continuing on with the missing 411 subject. I'm going to talk about some of the most fascinating, bizarre cases, of which I was just saying there are many, many, many thousands. You just can't even believe the number of cases where it's just like, that's not possible. How is that possible? That go with that phenomenon. And yeah, I'm going to be jumping into that. I'm just taking a couple of plant medicine preppers as we get going. I hope everyone else is doing the same. Everybody else, if I know you or if you've been here and you behave yourself for a short period of time, I'm going to mod you. That is so that you can, that's not so that you can snipe off trolls. I've got a couple of people in here who are pretty much going to take care of that for me. If someone bothers you or they're disrupting the flow of a conversation and they're really, out of line, go ahead and, block them. However, I would prefer that people not get blocked unless they're just really insulting and really, really annoying. So the wrenches are there for you to go and hook up with everyone else. You can click on someone's name and go directly to their channel. When you get there, make sure and leave a like under a short of theirs and a little message saying I was here, I'm at WassamattaU's live with you, and I'll be back later to check out more. And hopefully they'll return the favor. I've seen in a couple of my little air spots that I hang out here on live streams and whatnot, I've seen some intermingling of people that have come directly from my live stream, so I'm happy to see that. Very happy to see that. All right, I'm going to take one more hit and then we'll get going. The dog poop. Oh boy. Excuse me. Wow. That was some oh boy. That was good. Okay. Wow. That one gave me the numb throaties, you know what I'm talking about? Oh boy. Hey Okie Outlaw, good to see you, buddy. I'm gonna be talking about right now, basically jumping back into the missing 411. I'm going to talk about some of the strangest, most bizarre cases, of which there are many. First, I'm going to talk about a case that happened at Crater Lake, which is a spot that is a cluster for disappearances, and these disappearances do happen in clusters, both in time and space. And Crater Lake is a big one. That whole area of the Three Sisters Wilderness area of Oregon. Not only do people go missing there, but generally speaking, they are never found. Even in recent years, we've had summers where 8, 10, 12 people have gone missing under bizarre circumstances in that area of Oregon. There was at least one summer where an amount of people somewhere in that range happened about 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago now, and probably since then, when I haven't been paying attention, there's been even more. But whatever the case, these generally people that go missing in this area, they are never found. Not, I mean, there's no rules when it comes to this, and I can think of a case or two where people were found, but there's a lot of people that go missing there, and there are areas where people tend to be found and areas where people tend to not be found, and other areas where it's about half and half. This is an area where people are tended to never be found again, and that's not normal in today's day and age when you've got helicopters flying over with forward-looking infrared. You've got multiple trained dog teams, especially when you know right where the person vanished from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't make sense. It's something that people could kind of easily write off in their mind as making sense because it's in the wilderness for someone to go missing. But when you really look into the efforts that are put into searching for these people, and you see that searchers were there for weeks and hundreds of them, and sometimes, and they had multiple dog teams, and they knew right where the person disappeared, and the searchers walked hand in hand through the forest and strung string between the trees until it was just a web that you couldn't even walk through, and for miles and miles all around. And maybe the person was 80 years old and barely mobile. Those are the kind of details that appear in these cases over and over and over. So as I was saying, Crater Lake. Now the Crater Lake one goes way back because one of the first European photography people that was in this area of the country, in this western area very early. He was kind of like an Ansel Adams, and I can't remember his name now, but he disappeared. He didn't make it past Crater Lake. He went in there with all of his gear and everything like that. And you know, those cameras back then, they were big and bulky, and he had a ton of big, bulky, expensive camera equipment. So none of that was ever found. And now people go, oh, you got robbed, this and that. Well, there was nobody around here to rob him at the time. The Native Americans would just absolutely refuse to go anywhere near Crater Lake. That is a forbidden land ground for them. They say that it's that ground is controlled by very bad spirits or whatever, and also inhabited by hairy tribe people, hairy tribesmen, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. And so they don't go near Devil's Lake. They also believe that there's a very bad spirit that lives in that lake as well. When that's quite possible. Let me tell you one of the first stories here. So there was a man, and I'm forgetting whether this was 70s or 80s or what, but it was not that long ago. It could have even been more recent. I'll have to look up. But anyways, he was traveling across the country with his wife, and I know the basics of the story. He was traveling across the country with his wife. They had retired, and they'd bought like a mobile home, a small mobile whatever, and they got all the way to Crater Lake, which they came from, I believe, the East Coast initially, or possibly Ohio, but whatever. They came a long ways. They get to Crater Lake, and if you know Crater Lake, there's like a road that goes like 3/4 of the way around it, and then there's a turnaround and you got to go back on that road. There's no road that goes all the way around it. And I'm going to talk about the disappearance of a little boy named Sammy Belkey in a second, and that will become more important. And it's a very sad, Sammy Belkey is a very sad story, but a very, very strange one as well. But this guy, they stop at one of the overlooks looking out over the lake, and everything is fine. No one, to this day, no one can explain what happened. His wife said they were happy. There was no indication this guy, he had never suffered depression, anything like that. Let me see what we got going here really quick. Bob I3F1H. Democrat men can become pregnant. Okay, don't black him, but Bob, come on now. I mean, that's just, no one here is going to laugh or like be impressed by that. Scale and Bones. Hey, buddy. Good to meet you. Scale and Bones. Double tap that screen. That's right. You behave yourself for a short while here. I'll mod you up and you'll be able to hook up with everybody else here, because that's the point of it. But for now, let me continue on. So this man and his wife, they were traveling across the country, retired. They were having the time of their life. Everything was good. They get to Crater Lake, and they're standing there looking at the lake. And the lake, like I said, there's this road. I gotta pull my pants up and get them ready for walking. There's this road that goes around 3/4 of the way around the lake, and then you turn around. Can't hardly button my pants, I'm so chunky. And come back on that road. And so they're at one of the overlooks, and the way that it works is you can't just walk down to the water, the lake's edge, in most places. In most places on that road, it's very steep from the road down to the lake's edge, and it's like scree. If you know what scree is, it's like a larger than gravel, but it's kind of like large gravel, big chunks of stone that when you step on it, it avalanches, causes an avalanche. Okay, so this guy there at the overlook with his wife, and she said that nothing happened. There was no indication of anything was wrong. He just suddenly started walking down this slope, and tripping and falling and sliding down this slope towards the water's edge. And she calls after him, "Honey, what are you doing? Oh my God." And he doesn't respond. He just keeps walking. Everyone there said he was almost like he was mechanical and just deaf and wasn't hearing them. So he gets himself down to the lake's edge, and he jumps in, and he proceeds to DROWN himself. And it takes him several tries because your body will rebel when you try to suck in water. It wasn't a pretty thing, I guess, but he managed to do it. Completely unexplained. Now, maybe he had some secret diagnosis of cancer that he didn't want to tell his wife about, and he just played it off all the way up until that moment. There's possible explanations like that. When you look at this area, though, and you see these kind of things happening again and again, and weird things happening, you got to start to wonder. There may not be an explanation, and it may be that if they never went to that spot, that nothing like that would have ever happened. So nothing's ever come out later to say, oh, it turned out he had, this or that, or had done this or that and didn't want to live with himself. No, there's still no explanation. So I'm going to go back to this photographer who disappeared there at Crater Lake. He went in there with all of his stuff, black and white photography, and he disappeared, and none of his stuff was ever located. Now fast forwarding to, not to this day even has any of that stuff ever been found. Now fast forwarding to 1970s, there's a 19-year-old young man named Charles McCullough, and he's decided to take a year off of university to travel the country in his Volkswagen and bus, and see the national parks. And he had a friend over here that lived over by Crater Lake, and so part of his itinerary was to stop in that area at his friend's house and visit for a few days, and to see as much of Crater Lake as he could. However, the weather at the time was not going to be particularly accommodating. It was wintertime. There wasn't a lot of snow on the ground yet, but they were expecting some major storms. So he gets to his friend's house, and he gets his friend to give him a ride rather than take his Volkswagen up there, because the weather is supposed to take this change, and it's supposed to be a little later that night. But so basically he tells his friend, look, just drop me off here. I'll try to get a ride back, or I'll call you for a ride later if I need it. This was still earlier in the day, and the storm was supposed to come in really late that night. Well, around the late evening time, when Charles probably should be coming back, the storm actually gets there a little bit early. And there are people, and Charles had said, I'm not going to go far out of the parking lot. Oh, what do we got here? I'll take a quick break here, and let's see what's going on here. There's a bunch of camp chairs here. I've never seen nothing like this going on here in the park. Let's see. So we're taking a quick break here. Let's see what's going on, folks. Let's hear what he says. What do we got going on here? Okay. Let's hear what he has to say.
Okay, I'm going to read one more time. There rests upon the top of Oregon a hood of snowy peak on cloak of green. And if you summit it and face the north, Mounts Adams and St. Helens can be seen. unless, of course, the weather is of cloud, or snow, or sleet, or rain, or hail, or mist. And soaking of the rain, there's Mount Rainier. To fail to mention her, I'd be remiss. And if you were to rotate to the south, Mount Jefferson is something to behold, and that's about the most I can recount of mountains you can see while getting cold. Now let's turn our heads less heavenward to water bodies in the neighborhood, the famousest of which is Crater Lake.
Crater Lake, that's synchronicity.
From south to north of mighty Willamette, a tributary of Columbia, whose headwaters reside in Canada. But that's a topic for another time. To Oregon, the city we retreat, to Clackamas and the Tualatin, from the northwest and southeast perspective, spilled into aforementioned Willamette. I hope you found this tour informative, or entertaining at the very least. My name is Matthew Gibbs, and I'm your host. And at this time, this call will promptly cease. Go.
That was cool. So this is some kind of a tour group. What are they doing? They're playing a game of some kind. That was weird, guys, that they mentioned Crater Lake almost right away. Like, that's a weird synchronicity, huh? Weird. Oh, look at these doggies. Oh, those are good-looking dogs. Good-looking dogs. Huh. Well, I'm tempted to stay here and watch this a little bit longer, but I don't feel like I'm really a part of it. So I'm going to continue on here. I'm sure it's nothing that's that enthralling. It is interesting. I've seen people who've apparently rented these benches and stuff for just a day for like family picnics and whatnot, but never anything like this. There's like a tent over there, just a partly open temporary tent. It's not like someone's sleeping in the park or anything. You can't do that. Interesting. I wonder what this is. They should have somebody around here for curious onlookers to give them cards and things like that. Hey, John P. What's up? So that was weird synchronicity that I walk up and here's this guy start talking about mentioning Crater Lake. That's a little bit bizarre. Because I don't think I've heard anybody else mention that lake for not even online for a little while. Just, yeah. So anyways, Charles McCullough, he's 19. He's going up to the lake to do some photography. He tells his buddy, hey, I might call you for a ride back, or I might find a ride back, whatever. But I'm not going to go far out away from the parking lot because of the storm that's supposed to come in later tonight. And I'll be back. Well, this evening comes in, the storm starts rolling in a little bit early, and Charles doesn't come in. And there were people who saw him around the parking lot there and verified that he was there. And basically, the storm comes in so rapidly and so viciously that there's 20-foot snow drifts almost immediately. And so when they call Charles in as missing, there's not a lot they can do. They can't send people out. It's too dangerous to send people out into conditions like that in that area especially. And so they basically tell Charles's dad, look, we're gonna have to wait till spring and find him. He can't be far from the parking lot, but there's no chance that he's alive. This is like day 2 or 3 when Charles's dad, he was very close with his dad. His dad flew right out here. But there's just no way that they can have any hope. They tried dogs and a few other things, but there was just no finding Charles, even though they believed that he had to be within a few hundred yards of the parking lot at most. And that with the spring thaw, they had people out there ready to scoop the body up with the cadaver up with the spring thaw. Again, though, they did try taking cadaver dogs out there on several instances, which really, if he was within a couple hundred yards of the parking lot, you would think they would be able to find him even in the winter, in the cold of winter. Those dogs are really good. Anyways, so the springtime comes and the thaw comes and they don't find Charles. And they're really baffled by this. They can't understand how it can be that he isn't somewhere pretty darn close to that parking lot where he was seen when the storm began. And where he said he would be and was expected to be. And so they're just baffled. They search and search, and they got cadaver dogs and everything else in the spring and the summer. His father had mounted, a number of private searches and paid people to search, and they just don't find him. So 2 years later, in the summertime, there is a couple, and they are kind of deep country backpacking way out in the middle of nowhere, basically. They're 14 miles from that parking lot and from really anything that any kind of human habitation or anything at all, or even road, way out. And they come to a box canyon, which, if anyone doesn't know what a box canyon is, it's kind of like a canyon that's been cut in the side of a wall, cliff wall basically, and there's by a creek or stream or river, and this one was pretty steep walled, and there was a big tree that had fallen back down in there, a big huge old tree with a trunk, 15-foot diameter trunk, or not that big, but a large trunk, 8-foot diameter trunk, whatever. And so they're at the edge of this box canyon, and at the tree line there, leaning up against a tree, they see a backpack. And it's closed. It's leaning there like someone just leaned it there, and there's nobody around. So they start getting into this backpack, and almost immediately they find this Volkswagen key, which was everybody in that area, who I think these people were kind of from that area, or who had known anything about Charles McCullough's disappearance, knew about this key. They were looking for this key. And so they kind of knew, and I think they found his wallet in there as well. And so they also see what they think might be little pieces of bone lying all over the place. So they immediately leave, and they go and they call the Parks Department, and they send a couple of body recovery agents in. Now, one of these body recovery agents was interviewed by this author, David Politis, 15 to 20 years ago now, when he started these books, when he started this investigation. This was an early case that he came across. And that body recovery guy, he had been a teacher at PSU in the winters, and then every summertime he would take his family out to Crater Lake, where he would work as a body recovery agent ranger for the Parks Department for the summer. And he'd been doing this for years, but he never took his family back there again. I don't know, I heard that reported in one of the I'm not sure if that part is true or not, but regardless, he did indicate that it creeped him out quite a bit, what he found there. And so what that was is these two body recovery agents, they ride back there on horseback. It takes them a few days to get back there. They get there, they see the backpack the people are talking about. They get into it, all the stuff in there is neatly folded, untouched basically. There's food in there untouched, etc., etc. And they start back into this box canyon, and they can see what these people probably meant when they were talking about pieces of bone, because there are little 1-inch pieces of bone laying all over the place. They don't look like they have any kind of standard scavenger or predator tooth marks on them. They're very strange pieces of bone, he said. And he gets back, he said there was where this tree had fallen back in this box canyon next to this creek. He said he had a bad feeling about it right off before he even looked, but he jumped up on this tree, and on the other side was a sight that made his stomach fall into his feet, essentially. And what that was, he said it was as if you were standing there and you were just wearing your jeans and your socks and your underwear, and you undid your belt and unbuckled your pants button, and you unzipped them, and then you pulled your pants down, and then you just basically melted into them or vanished. There were, in the socks that were still in the bottom of the pant legs, there were some foot bones, but not all of the foot bones, as you would expect, which is odd, kind of inexplicable. And the left shin bone, the tibia, was sticking up in the left pant leg. It was sticking straight up still, and it was broken off. And that's very strange as well. That's difficult to explain as well. And otherwise, the pants are sitting there upright as if someone's still standing in them with them pulled all the way down. They've got the boxers in them, basically, or the underwear, and that shin bone and a few foot bones in the socks, and none of the rest of the bones are there. And he had seen a skull cap on the way in. If you don't know what a skull cap is, everyone here probably does, but it's just a thick area of your skull that tends to last a long time out in the wild, even if animals are chewing on your bones. It's one of the last things to last there because it's heavy and thick. And so they didn't know what to do with this, even though this guy had been a body recovery agent for a long, long time. They didn't know what to do with this, so they called the Portland FBI, who flew back in there in helicopters, and he said that they were very, very hush-hush. They wouldn't share information with him. They wanted him to give information, and then he started asking some questions, and they were like, basically just wouldn't answer anything. He's like, well, I'm done talking then too. He was really kind of not happy with them. He said they took the top foot of topsoil from the entire area. And he didn't know exactly why that was. Let me see what we got going here. John P, thanks for the sub. Yes, thank you, John P. John P loves everybody. And Double Wubba, we love Double Wub, of course. What I wanted to see, okay, awakened reflection. Can't stay but glad I got to pop in and say hello, sending love to all those who sent love back to you. Awakened reflection, love back to you. And love to John P, and love from our John P. If you want to feel that love, you gotta feel that John P love, baby. Okay. Okay, so yeah, they took the entire top foot. Hey, Juggalesis. They took the entire top foot of topsoil. He didn't know why they did that. It seemed kind of odd to him, but the whole situation seemed odd to him. He said he constantly remembers the sight of those pants with that bone sticking up out of them. Later on, as life has gone on, he's never been able to forget the sight of that and the way that it just made his stomach kind of drop out, because he's recovered a number of bodies in his career before that, and he's seen a lot of weird stuff, but nothing weird like that. Now, what's even stranger about it, of course, is he was 14 miles from that parking lot. He had no snowshoes, he had no snowmobile, he had no horse, he had no nothing. In 20-foot snow drifts. Basically, anyone who is asked, the sheriff, anyone who works in that area, the FBI, the body recovery agents, anybody who is asked will tell you what he did, considering people saw him in the parking lot. To get to that spot is impossible. Something carried him there or flew him there. If it was something that carried him there, it was something that is extremely tough and able to go through a 20-foot snow blizzard as well. Carried him there with his backpack completely still intact, not even looking jumbled up or nothing. They did not find his camera. What they did not find is they did not find his camera. They did not find his boots. They did not find his jacket of any kind. There was no jacket of any kind anywhere around there. Just like a chewed up t-shirt was the only top. So yeah, his camera, they didn't find his knife. He didn't have a pew-pew on him, but there was a number of things like that, things that would never disintegrate and that animals wouldn't take, that they never did find, ever. No one ever found them, or no one ever admitted to finding them. And again, somehow he got an impossible distance away from the in a snow so far that they hadn't even dreamed of looking for that far away from that parking lot, because there was no way to get anywhere in that kind of conditions. And how did he become unalived? What would add up to the scene that was found there? where it looks like he just calmly undid his belt buckle and button and unzipped his pants, pulled his pants down, and then melted or disappeared or exploded. Or some people had said, well, maybe he froze and then floated, but no, experts on that have said no, that's not what you're seeing there. We have advanced forensics these days, and we know what certain things look like, and I can basically guarantee you that all normal, obvious, and even just plain, just even slightly prosaic explanations are pretty much ruled out on that one. No one knows. We don't know what happened. It's just a darn mystery. The FBI may know, because they have even though they were called in this instance, the FBI has a very strange habit of showing up on a lot of these disappearances, and that in spite of the fact that they generally don't investigate disappearances. That's not something that they do, unless it's of children or disappearances that involve like multi-state things and whatnot. But for single crimes that involve multi-state involvement. Otherwise, there was one other category for missing adults that they look into, but anyways, it was nothing that fits any of these cases. And so that's Charles McCullough, and it's a very, very strange one. But again, they're all very, very strange. So now, staying at Crater Lake. Well, actually, let's not stay at Crater Lake here. I'm going to move now to talk about, well, Yosemite, for one thing, is the biggest cluster that there is. This is where it blows all the other spots in the country and in the world so far that we know of. There could be other spots in the world where things like this are going on, but with language barriers and freedom issues, freedom of information, not everywhere do they even have free information that the people can get that live there, let alone foreigners, et cetera, et cetera. So getting law enforcement data, missing people data, I mean, it could be that, for example, that the Amazon jungle is far, far worse than Yosemite. But Yosemite is the worst that we know of, and definitely the worst in North America. The most people now, Pennsylvania, it's a state that's a cluster all to itself. Trini Gibson disappeared in Pennsylvania. She was on a field trip with other people her age. I believe they were 17. Yes, they were 17. Juniors or seniors in high school, one of the two. And they had a field trip out on the Appalachian Trail, basically. And, in Pennsylvania, I should say. Not sure if that's the Appalachian Trail or not, but anyways, people that were there said everything was normal with her. There was no, they investigated all kinds of leads after this. Supposedly there was a boy who was kind of infatuated with her, and they found an article of her clothing in his car or whatever, but that just led nowhere. It turned out to just be some harmless BS, like whatever. And he had alibis, basically. And they ran down all kinds of stuff like that. Maybe she ran away with some older man. Now you got to realize this was back in the 70s. This was before the internet. She wasn't having a secret internet fling. You couldn't even really get away when you had a house phone back then that everybody shared, and your parents used the same house phone as you. And believe me, very few people even had double lines in their home. It was usually just one phone line that everybody had to share. And so anyway, she wasn't having some secret romance with some guy from somewhere else or anything like that. Trini Gibson, you can look her up. And she basically, people said that on the trail, they came to a spot and Trini was in their sight, 30, 40 feet ahead of them or whatever. And she stopped and apparently looked at something off the side of the trail that caught her attention. And she was staring for 5-10 seconds, and everybody said it was weird. She just kind of stepped off the main trail into the bushes. Never seen again. Massive searches. Again, they chased down every lead they could think of. She was never ever seen again. This is the kind of thing that happens. There's an old man in the hunters. I encourage everybody to watch Missing 411 documentaries. I think they're usually free on YouTube. The first one's about missing kids and the weird, impossible distances they go uphill and stuff like that. The next one's hunters and people like that are really, proficient in the wilderness with their wilderness skills, etc., that disappear. People you wouldn't expect to, they're armed, etc. And then the next one is the UFO connection. And I would go in order if I could, if I was you. But anyways, in the hunting one, I was saying, in the hunters, it's either called the hunters or the hunted. Anyways, this man, he's 80-something years old. He's got one glass eye. He was beloved by his whole community, so much so that when people were out there looking for him, when the search was going on, there are people that were just going, is this like the governor's brother or something? Like, what's going on here? Because so many people showed up. This old guy, he had taught, like, Cub Scouts and gun safe, pew safety and everything and camping and all this stuff to generation after generation of kids in that whole area, New York, and not the Catskill Mountains, by the oh boy, I'm gonna blank really quick for a second here, but it'll come to me in a second. But the other main mountain range there in New York, and basically, but he was fairly disabled, even though he had all these skills that he had been teaching and passing on. And he was a war veteran and from World War II, almost from World War I practically, but no, World War II. And he was an old guy. And basically what they did is they would regularly go deer hunting, and they would set up the old fellers on these rocks about 25 to 50 yards away from each other in a line. And the younger men would all go, and they would make this one big kind of circuitous hike and walk through this wilderness area. And the idea was to push the deer towards the old men that were waiting there on their lookouts for waiting there for the deer to come through if any got pushed through. And they had a pretty good success. I guess that's a pretty common hunting technique that they use up in that area. I hadn't ever really heard of exactly that here, but somewhat similar things. But I guess it's really a big thing there. That's kind of what you do. And so they set this guy up on his rock, and he had his rifle. He'd been doing this since he was a kid, basically the same thing. And he's almost disabled. And they never found hide nor hair of this cat. Nothing. Not his weapon, not his boots, not his hat, not a candy bar wrapper, which his wife made very clear that he would never leave a candy bar wrapper or any kind of garbage out in the wilderness. He was always picking up anything he found. But nonetheless, you would think if an abduction of some kind of occurs, which pretty much has to be the case, there's no way this guy couldn't walk well enough or see well enough to travel any distance in the wilderness there on his own. And just to leave nothing behind, nothing at all. I mean, this is a wooded area, decently thick. It's not quite as thick as like the Pacific Northwest. It's pretty thick, but this is one of those cases where they used the string, and they stringed up their search grids, and they went over and over and over and over within like a several mile area there, even though they knew he really couldn't go more than a few hundred feet, just in case. They covered several miles. Hey, and the people that were there said there were so many people that showed up to help with the search because this guy was so beloved and so well known, and it lasted for weeks. And they put so much string, they said that the woods was just like you could walk basically like it was a giant trampoline between all the trees. That's how thick it was. They had gone over looking for this dude, and they had brought in multiple he was like a volunteer firefighter for years, and this and that, just did every damn thing. And so there had been multiple dog teams brought in to look for this dude. Now and nothing ever. And then of course coupled that with, you know, after a week goes by, even somebody with survival skills like that, especially that age, they're not going to live out there in the wilderness for a great amount of time. We're just not built for it. So cadaver dogs they can find a cadaver from miles away if the wind is right. And they had multiple teams out there. Not only could they never pick up a scent to begin with, even knowing the rock that he was sitting on, they know exactly what rock he was sitting on to start the dogs from. Dogs couldn't pick up a scent, which is weird. Because if you put the dogs on any of the other 3 old men that were sitting on rocks there, spread out, they couldn't see each other. They were far enough they couldn't see each other, so no one saw what happened. But if you put a dog on any of those other men, it would track where they went afterwards, you know, no problem. But whatever. So it's a very inexplicable disappearance. And it's just another one of many. In this case, you know, there would be a place to go if he was younger and in fit and better shape, and he had more than one eye that barely worked. You know, now one thing that happened is the only thing that happened that was at all a clue was one of the other hunters, one of the other old men who was positioned on a rock closest to this guy's. He said that at a certain time he heard a very strange noise that he's never heard out in the woods before, and it came from the direction that his buddy was at. And well, no, it didn't come exactly from that direction. It came from sort of that direction, but then uphill a little ways from them. And anyways, he said it was very strange at the time. It caught his attention because it was so, he couldn't think of what he could have just been listening to. It didn't make sense to him. And he said it was like a large metal gate, a large loud metal gate, a huge one, like a 60-foot tall large loud metal gate slamming shut or something like that. That was like the best description he could think of for that. Now the authorities largely just blew that clue off, didn't care to hear about it. This author, of course, was very interested in it, and one of the reasons why that is because he's not the first person to say that. And this old guy, he's never listened to any paranormal podcasts or watched any, you know, History Channel or YouTube stuff or anything like that about weird disappearances and nothing like that. But regardless, this sound of metal, like a large metal door or gate slamming, has been described by so many people. And interestingly, it usually happens right before a dogman or a Sasquatch sighting or sometimes a UFO sighting. That's when we've most commonly heard this sound reported. And most commonly of all now being dogman. Now, if it was dogman or Sasquatch who had come and taken this old guy, which isn't outside the realm of possibilities, but they would have had to have somehow done so without the tracker dogs being able to smell which way they went, which would be odd. Now, if they have interdimensional capabilities, however, that could have been the sound of, and that could be what people are hearing, the sound of an interdimensional barrier of some kind, opening and shutting. Maybe that could be that. And a lot of people believe that that is what that is, because it's also come with the association of this very bad smell. And it's a very bad smell that is often described. There are several different very bad smells that are associated with Sasquatch and dogmans, for example, and crawlers. One of them is kind of a natural but very unpleasant just dirty creature, dirty humanoid creature smell, like smegma, basically. If you know what that is, it's very unpleasant. There's that kind of a smell that, but then there's also kind of an unnatural, like almost like burnt metal smell that sometimes happens. And it tends to go kind of along with this metal door slamming in the woods in the middle of nowhere where there's no such thing around phenomenon. So that's another reason why people think that this might be the sound of like what a portal opening and closing sounds like, or a certain type of portal or something. So I guess if it was a dogman or a Sasquatch or something that took this old guy, then if they could open a portal and pull him into it, then yeah, the dogs wouldn't know where to go. But it could have been anything conceivable possibly that has the ability to open a portal like that. And it also could be a UFO site. It could be anything. It could be a portal to hell. It could be the demons. So I mean, just at that point, you really don't. All you can do is kind of speculate. But it is an interesting clue to at least consider. And it's really the only clue that anyone has. And to this day, no one has ever found that old guy. It's been 10 years, 12 years, something. And no one's ever found his rifle. No one's ever found his boots. I'm going to quiet down here for just a second because I'm walking by this group. I don't know what, they're out here at night still. Interesting. That would be cool if they could have a fire, but I'm sure they would get swooped on by the popos quickly if they tried that, which is stupid. They should be able to have a little campfire here if they want. Whatever. Can't do anything in this country. It's not a free country at all. I wonder what they are doing now. That's very interesting, but I don't want to be too snoopy imposing. Yeah, no one's ever found hide nor hair of this old guy. So something took him somewhere. There's just no way. Your boots don't disappear in the wilderness and mold away or rot away in that much time. It takes so long, and even after 100 years, your boots are going to largely still be there. At least the rubber and the soles and the metal pieces. The rifle, it's not going anywhere by itself, and it's not disintegrating. They never found anything, nothing, and people have been back many times. There's still paranormal researchers who go up there. Jeff Nadonley, who has the Dogman Paranormal Research Channel. He lives, hold on, excuse me there, get a little snotty. He lives in an area that's not too far from there in New York, and so he's kind of obsessed with this disappearance. He's been up there many times, and he's had some weird stuff happen up there too. And yeah, that's just, again, this is one of thousands and thousands of these cases. Literally, this should be front page frickin' news. That's how statistically impossible it is. Like, something intelligent is behind these, and it's a phenomenon, a heck of a phenomenon. Again, as weird as that is, where there's nowhere to go, or somebody who couldn't go anywhere, and they just, something took them away. That's just all there is to it. And so this should be front page news, especially when you start getting into looking closely at who it is that's disappeared, and seeing that it's the same type of person. It's one of a certain type of person over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And there are a number of different types, like long distance runners, doctors. Doctors are a big one. Medical doctors, I mean. Physicists are a big one. Boy, if I was a physicist, I wouldn't go anywhere near the woods, at least not the North American woods, that's for sure. I wouldn't even go in a rural area, because a lot of these cases happen in rural areas. They're not even necessarily out in the woods. Now, I mentioned earlier I was going to talk about Sammy Belkey at Crater Lake, and I kind of moved on and left with it. Stop. I forgot him, so I'm going to go back to that. Sammy Belkey was 4 years old. This was about 15 years ago, I would say now. Don't quote me on that exactly, but it was sometime in the not too distant past. And he was 4 years old, and he was kind of a special kid. He was a little bit autistic, I think. Had some hearing problems. Just wasn't as advanced as some of his fellow children his age. But you know, a lot of times people like that catch up later. But whatever the case, he was a very good kid, very happy kid. Had a dad who loved him very much. And they went to Crater Lake one day. And like I told you before, Crater Lake doesn't go. The road around Crater Lake doesn't go 360 degrees around the lake. It goes about 3/4 of the way. Then there's a big lookout area and a turnaround, and you go back. And everywhere, the bank going down to the lake is extremely steep, scree rock, etc., etc. So anyway, Sammy and his father, they get to that turnaround, that main turnaround there at Crater Lake. And they get out of the car and they're just taking a break, stretching their legs, taking a look at the view, just doing father-son stuff, having a good time. Now, on the back end of that parking lot, or that turnaround area, there was a berm. And just because I've had a few people ask me what a berm is in the past, I'm going to just tell you, even though probably everyone here knows already. A berm is just like a mound of debris and or dirt, usually just dirt, that often with things growing on it. It's just kind of a backdrop mound or a backstop. Anyways, there's a dirt berm there with really nothing on it. And they're outside, and Sammy runs up on top of this berm and is waving at his dad. His dad's waving at him. They're laughing. His dad takes a photograph. Well, his dad said said a similar thing to what they said about Trenny Gibson. He said that Sammy apparently something caught Sammy's attention off on the other side of the berm that the dad could not see. And Sammy looked over that way, and the dad knew instantly that, you know, this wasn't necessarily great, because Sammy's attention was just fixated. He's like, Sammy. And then he starts walking towards Sammy. He's like 40 feet away or whatever. And he said Sammy doesn't listen to him, just walks off the back end of the berm. Now, for a second there, he's not even worried, because, you know, where they are, etc., etc. He's much faster than Sammy could ever be. He wasn't that far away. But it was another case where he got up to this dirt and looked on the other side, and his guts just dropped out, because Sammy was gone. Just gone. Now, there was basically, what was there was just a clear-cut area for about 150 yards, and then forest going steeply uphill. And there's nowhere to go. So even then, he wasn't immediately super panicked. I mean, he's freaking out, yeah, because what the hell, where did Sammy go? But he's looking to see if there's a hole he fell in, or he's trying to figure an explanation, because where could Sammy have gone? There's nowhere for him to go. Well, after a little bit of not finding him, he's really freaking out, and he calls for help. There is a humongous search. I can't remember if the weather turned bad after this. That's one of the profile points, is right after these people disappear, very often the weather, usually unexpectedly, takes a turn for the worse. But I don't remember in this case if that happened. Nonetheless, there was a huge search, all stops pulled out. Search for Sammy Belkey. You can look this up for yourself. He was never found. And again, other than Charles McCullough, I can't think of any other cases. I think there was one other case maybe where someone was, but generally speaking, people that are disappeared in that area are never found. And they tend to be children and younger men. There are some cases of old people in the area disappearing and whatnot, but yeah, they are generally just never found again. In the Three Sisters, we used to go camping when I was a kid in the Three Sisters Wilderness area every year, every summer. Hey, Roadhog Camel. Hey, Brent Shimko. You guilty, buddy. You're so guilty. Lady Sky. Hey. John P. Okay, cool. I'm getting ready to wrap this up here pretty soon now. But I just had wanted to go over, just to kind of show how strange a lot of these cases are. Now, really quick, another case just to give so there was a woman that lived in a rural home, and she had a son who was a special needs kid. And actually, she was his aunt, because the mother was basically, I guess, kind of a street living drug addict or whatever. She couldn't take care of this kid. I mean, can't remember his name now. It wasn't Sammy. That's the other kid's name. Anyways, but the aunt, she loved this kid, and she put out all the stops for him. He was a special needs kid, so basically she had alarms on the front and back doors of her house, so know if he ever went outside, because he just didn't quite have the wherewithal to be not walk in front of a tractor or something, just whatever. So she was very protective of him. So one day she's there, and they're in a very rural home. Again, there's alarms on the front and back door. They have a dog, a full-grown dog in the front yard with a puppy. And I'm sorry, they have a full-grown dog in the front yard that barks at everything. And the kid, they have a brand new puppy that the kid is playing with. And so one day the aunt is watching the kid play with the puppy on the floor, and she's a little bit tired. She decides to snooze. She just snoozes for like 10 or 15 minutes, and she wakes up and the kid is gone. And she knows that the front and back doors alarms haven't gone off, and the dog hasn't barked, so she's not particularly worried at first. However, as she gets looking all through the house and she can't find the kid, she's getting more and more worried. And she finally calls for help, and they look, and he's not in the house. And the puppy is gone. And the adult dog in the front is actually gone as well. So now, partway through that first day, the adult dog comes back to the house. They'd been looking, they had a bunch of people out there searching, and no one had seen the dog, but somehow it walked through everybody and just kind of appeared back in the house. Like the third day, the puppy comes back. Still no sign of the kid. They're really getting worried. I'm sorry, the puppy did not come back. Sorry to get things mixed up. So anyways, down the road a ways, a couple weeks later, they're building a new housing development. And it had been searched several times for this kid. There'd been hundreds of people out searching for this kid for days or whatever, but this is like a week after he disappears. And some people are looking at a brand new house in this housing development, and a little girl opens a closet door, and she darn near gets a heart attack when a puppy dog leaps out of the closet onto her. Now, in the closet is this little boy, and he's deceased. What's really weird about it is that house had been searched along with that housing development multiple times, and the kid had not been seen, neither had the dog. What's even stranger is that there was no dog feces or kid feces in that closet. So even though the officials want to say he was in that closet the whole time, even though there were people looking at the house and no one ever heard or saw anything, and for days that they were supposedly in that closet and they never pooped or peed in there, but they still want to say officially that's where the kid was. Was he in that closet? I mean, I think common sense would tell anyone, no, he wasn't in the closet. Where he was, he didn't have like hypothermia like he'd been outside or anything like that. In fact, they couldn't determine why he expired. They couldn't figure it out. And that's common to these cases, is that they undetermined COD, which is weird in this day and age. One more, I'm going to talk about actually two more really, really quick, and then I'm going to end this. One of them is a rafting guide. He's on the Colorado River with a rafting service on the Colorado River. Now, what this service does is they do an overnight rafting thing down the river, and at one point they camp overnight, and they always camp at the same spot. And in the morning they get up and they go, they arrive there in the evening and they camp. And in the morning they get up and there's a beautiful there's a creek that runs, a tributary that runs into the Colorado there, and it's only about 1.5 foot deep creek, about 3 feet wide or whatever, and it goes back for a ways to a place where there's a beautiful waterfall that falls down into a beautiful swim pool, and they go there, and so they wake up and they hike back there. It's only like a mile or something, less than that, half a mile, and they go back there and they swim, and then they get back on the water and continue their trip. And this time, one of the guys who's a guide, he's with them, and they get to that spot and they camp for the night. And the next morning they get up and they go back to this place where this water hole is to go swimming. And they swim and they have a great time. Well, on the way back, he's at almost the end of the line. And at one point he stops and says he's not really feeling good. And so the guide who's watching the very end of the line says, okay, hey, I'll move up a little bit. You come up and you'll be the last one of our employees that's watching for any stragglers or whatever to come along and make sure no one gets left behind or whatever. And he's like, cool. So he sits down for a second, and the group continues on. Well, the group gets back to the place on the river where they're camped, and they're all packed up and ready to get back on the water, and this dude doesn't come along. So they think, well, he must have been sicker than they thought. They can actually pretty much shout to him where he's at, but he's just barely out of shouting distance. But so they send people back there to find him. This cat is gone, and I mean gone. They search for him. There's nowhere to go. Basically, the only way that you can get out of that area is if you had climbing gear and you climbed out there near where the waterfall was, and there are rattlesnakes in there, good numbers of rattlesnakes, rock slides, all kinds of danger. It'd be incredibly dangerous without climbing gear. Even with climbing gear, it would be. But this guy had no gear. He had nothing, but he probably didn't even have shoes. I don't know. I don't remember if he had his shoes or not. Maybe he would have had shoes, I guess. But, I'm sure he was just in his swim trunks and t-shirt otherwise. And this wasn't his first time on this trip or anything. But regardless, even if it had been his very first trip, there is nowhere to go. He couldn't have floated past them in this little 1.5 foot deep creek. It's not even big enough to carry a person like that. But they would have seen him even if he did. Even if he wanted to try to be sneaky getting out of there, it would be impossible. Let alone somehow get out of there unseen completely. It doesn't make any sense. Now, they actually used searchers. They sent them up, climbing up to search the deserty area beyond where this waterfall was, just in case, and beyond where this little canyon was, just in case. They definitely did, and they flew helicopters and stuff just to make sure he didn't climb out of there. But they pretty much that was, and unless he just had completely lost his mind in just the snap of the fingers or something. But they never did find hide nor hair of him, and they probably never will. So that's one of those couple cases that I said I was going to wrap up on, and I'm actually on the opposite side of the park from my house right now, so maybe I'll have time to squeeze in 2 of these disappearances. But whatever, that's one of them. Now, this is what I'm talking about, though. Case after case after case, where there is just nowhere to go. So I'm going to go back to Mount Shasta. I talked the other day about Mount Shasta and the kid who disappeared and ended up in the cave with with a robot grandmother that was doing tests on him and whatnot, and asked him to poop on the sticky paper. And then when he didn't have to go, she scared him and he kind of passed out and woke up in the arms of searchers. And then the grandmother, his own grandmother, it turned out, had been camping there several weeks beforehand, and something had happened to her in the night where she ended up outside of her tent, laying face down on the ground when she woke up in the morning, and she had a small bloody hole on the back of her neck. And she assumed she'd been bitten by a poisonous spider or something like that, and she didn't know what to think. But then a couple weeks later, this kid gets abducted, and here's this robot grandmother. If you put two and two together, kind of makes a very strange version of 4. But anyways, Mount Shasta is a very eerie place. There's all kinds of things that people claim live there. Lemurians underneath Mount Shasta, and several other. There's what are the ones that have the little elephant-like trunks noses? Anyways, there's a number of underground species that are said to live in the area. This, according to what this kid saw, it appears to be like a mountain with a kind of a helper worker droid that is still there carrying out its tasks after 1,000 years or whatever. That's just what that appears. That story makes it appear to be. I don't know, but there's all kinds of Sasquatch there at Mount Shasta, and it's a paranormal hotspot and a vortex. Basically, they say it's a very, it's a very spiritually heavy place. So, anyways, when you are climbing Mount Shasta, there's a spot where when you get close to the summit, and basically there's a spot where people will sometimes camp, and then there's kind of this wide, almost road that goes a short distance, like a quarter mile or something like that, and then there's this little area where you can check in or not, but there's a little hut there. You can check in if you want to and write your name and everything, and then you go up and summit and come back. And so basically these 3 guys, one of them retired, Carl, his name is Carl, can't remember what his last name is right now, but his name was Carl, and he was retired, and him and his wife, it was a sad story. His wife said they were, they had worked all their lives, and they were really ready to start their retirement. They had their little dream house and garden and everything going, and he just vanished. But basically, he was with 2 other guys, and they had camped there at that camp spot that I mentioned with the intention of waking up in the morning, walking this short distance to where this little hut is, signing in, going up and summiting, and then coming down and going home. And so they wake up in the morning, and Carl's not feel good. And this is a very common thing to happen. If you're out in the wilderness with other people and you're not feeling good, do not split up with them. Do not. In fact, you're out in the wilderness, you should have a buddy system anytime that you're in any amount of wilderness. I don't care if you're right outside the city in Forest Park here in Portland. I don't care where you are. If you're in a very rural or a wilderness or a forest area, you should have a buddy, and don't take your eyes off that person ever. If I had kids and I was taking them out to enjoy the wilderness, which I would want to do, it would be tough for me considering all the knowledge that I have about cryptids and missing 411 and UFOs and every other darn thing. But it would be tough for me. I'd almost have to have the kids tied to me. I just don't know how else I could be at peace while I was out there with all these cases I know of weird disappearances. And like I said, there are thousands of them, and they're all just as weird as the ones I'm telling you about. It should be front page news every day. But anyways, so Carl wasn't feeling good, which is a common thing to have happen. So they told him, look, we'll go ahead and we're gonna leave you here with like a minimum amount of stuff. We're gonna do all the work to get the camp all packed up and whatnot, and then we can go. Well, when they get ready to go, Carl's still not really ready, so he stays behind. And so these 2, they go on and they sign in and they summit and they come back down and they get back to the camp, and Carl's not there. And they're like, what the hell? And so they turn around and they go back towards the summit, even though they knew that had he been there, coming their direction at any point, they would have seen him. There's really no way that he could have snuck, there's no spots where he could have snuck past them, but they don't know that for 100% sure, and they know what the plan is and everything, so they go back looking for him, and he's nowhere to be found. Now, the searcher in that case, he was in a number of cases, but of these cases, but He said, you know, either Carl went off of the mountain or into the mountain, but he was not on that mountain because they searched that area. There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to go. There's no lava tubes or holes to fall in, although they looked thoroughly enough just in case. Some kind of a cave in or anything like that. I mean, they looked. You got to realize they had multiple dog teams. And again, if not found alive, then cadaver dogs should be able to find somebody, you know, after they've been out there for long enough that they're expired. Nothing. They never found him. And again, so this park ranger said Carl went up off the mountain, or he went into it, but he's not on it. And they knew he didn't come down it. Never seen again. Nothing of him has ever been found again. So you can see this isn't just one or two cases like this where this kind of thing is going on. This is just, it's endless almost. And you learn about it and you think, how can this not be something that I've heard about before and something that's in the news all the time? Well, they don't want to panic people, and they don't even, you know, just like the Parks Department has fought tooth and nail against making any lists of missing people in their parks, or at least any lists that they will release to the public. You know they have the lists. They just refuse to follow FOIA. The Parks Department, if you think the cops are corrupt, the Parks Department is literally known to be like one of the most corrupt, awful government agencies that there are. They're just tyrannical. They make all these, you can't film in a national park, you can't do this, you can't do that. I mean, they are tyrannical, and they will send police to arrest you. They have one of the largest law enforcement contingent. No, they have the largest law enforcement contingent actually in the country. It's the Parks Department, and their enforcement agents are not, you know, redneck idiots or whatever. They're better trained than most city cops. They're more like detectives. They're not out there just picking up garbage and trash in the parks. Same thing with the National Forest Service. Exact same thing. Same thing with Canada's Forest Service. Very similar situations going on with all three of those. And they don't want to talk about any of this. They don't want any of it talked about. They have fought tooth and nail against releasing any of this information. Like I said, they now have a list of missing people from Yosemite on their website, but they never had one before, and they only put one up after this author had come out with like 7 books that included hundreds of weird disappearances from Yosemite, and basically their list doesn't include anybody that's not in his books, so they didn't release any new information by doing that. It's a possible confirmation that he's found the majority of these cases, although there's no way to know because the new information age is new, and so they had to scour libraries and microfiche and stuff like that to find these cases to begin with, to write the first books. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and end this one for today. I think I will continue and talk about a few more 411 cases on the next one. Although soon I'm going to be moving forward to talk about a few different subjects, including the most long anticipated, is that Slideshow I see? No, Logically Insane. Oh, hey, buddy. Logically Insane. Everybody, make sure to get over to Logically Insane, and he's got some excellent content, very spiritual stuff. I'll tell you, if they have the information that they appear to have, then there's some very fortunate people, and there's a lot you can learn from them. Everybody take care. Cool. Thank you, Roadhog Kennel, you'll be very happy that you subscribe to Logically Insane. They got some great stuff. And so, yeah, anyways, I'll be moving on to the long-awaited talk about what the number one problem in this country truly is, that almost no one knows. Virtually nobody knows that understands it. And that is that the unconstitutional legislation from the bench known as case law that has destroyed justice in this country, destroyed our rights, just as the founders predicted, this is what they said would happen if we allowed this, and we didn't listen to them. And almost nobody even knows that. So I'll be moving on to that soon enough. I think I'm going to do one more, probably at least one more here where I'm talking about these missing 411 cases. I've got a list of cases that I want to touch on and talk about. And I've got a couple of other interesting subjects coming up too, including the moon, what I've come to understand about the moon. Anytime I use the words "I know something," I'm speaking. I'm not being fully serious. I'm just using what's the gosh. I can't believe I'm blanking on this. The term that I'm talking about. But don't take I don't know anything any more than anybody else knows anything. Okay, so I'm just going with the best guesses that I've been able to put together here. So take anything that I say with a grain of salt. I'm going to try my best never to tell any lies or exaggerate anything. I don't need to. There's so much. That's what people always say. Oh, the 411 is exaggerated. No, you don't need to exaggerate it. There's so much bizarre, inexplicable stuff surrounding that. You don't need to make anything up. I mean, it's fantastic just as it is. So, anyways, everyone take care. Money banks being caught red-handed, silver at $80 an ounce. Red flags going on with the money. Oh yeah. I constantly try to tell people that I know who have American dollars, get rid of those dollars. Buy Japanese yen, buy gold, do something. Because our dollar is in extreme peril. Our money system is in extreme peril. And I don't know what's going to happen to everybody if all of a sudden you need a barrel full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread, like pre-war Germany. I don't know. But anyways, I'm not going to get into the doomsaying right now. I'm going to say good night. Everyone take care of each other. Spread as much love as you can. Forgive others, not for them, for you. It's not letting them off the hook, it's letting you off the hook. All right. Everyone sleep tight. Take care. Make sure and tell your loved ones that you love them. We don't even say that, me and my mom, really. We'll hug ever or anything. It's kind of weird, but that's just always been our relationship. But anyways, I can tell other people that are more comfortable with that. Make sure and do that. And yeah, everyone, until we meet again, auf Wiedersehen. Life under the mic. Good to see you, buddy. I was talking about 411 tonight and a number of specific weird cases. But anyways, good night. Good night all. Good night. Life under the mic. Good to see you. I'm glad you stopped in. Last I saw my mom, I caught a kick to the butter. What does that mean? That can't be good. You don't eat butter. Oh, you caught a kick to the butt. Okay, I gotcha. Oh, okay, there it is. You just said it, but okay. To the butter. I should have known that right away. All right, all. Peace. World peace.